I. In the forests of Madagascar, there's a primate that looks like evolution had a nightmare. The I has bulging yellow eyes, bat-like ears, and a skeletal middle finger that's longer and thinner than the rest. That finger is a precision hunting tool that's completely unique in the animal kingdom. Here's how it works. The I taps on tree bark with that extended finger, listening for the hollow spots that indicate insect tunnels underneath. It's called percussive foraging, and it's basically echolocation through touch. Once it finds a tunnel, it gnaws through the bark with rodent-like front teeth that never stop growing. Then it uses that skeletal finger to fish out grubs and larvae from inside the wood. The finger can rotate in ways that would break a human's, reaching into cracks and crevices to extract prey. What's happening here is an evolutionary adaptation that filled a specific niche. Madagascar has no woodpeckers, so the I evolved to do the same job. Those continuously growing teeth, perfect for gnawing through tough bark. This animal essentially became a primate version of a completely different type of bird. To put this in perspective, the oyer is the only primate that uses echolocation for hunting. It's also the world's largest nocturnal primate, which makes sense given that its prey is most active at night. But here's the tragic part. Local Malagasy folklore considers the IA an omen of death. If one points that creepy finger at you, superstition says you're cursed. Because of this belief, they're often killed on sight. Combined with habitat loss, they're now endangered. Thorny Devil. Picture a lizard covered head to tail in sharp thorn-like spikes, and you've got Australia's Thorny Devil. This animal drinks through its skin. The Thorny Devil's entire body is covered in microscopic grooves that channel water directly to its mouth. When it steps in a puddle or morning dew touches its skin, the water travels along these grooves through capillary action, basically pulling the liquid upward against gravity. The lizard doesn't need to lower its head to drink. It just stands there and the water flows to its mouth automatically. In the scorching Australian deserts where it lives, this is a game-changing adaptation. It can collect moisture from sand, fog, or even its own body if dew condenses on its scales overnight. This ability evolved because the Thorny Devil lives in one of the driest environments on Earth. Standing water is rare, so being able to harvest moisture from any surface is the difference between survival and dehydration. The grooves are so efficient that the lizard can hydrate from slightly damp sand that would be useless to most animals. But wait, there's more to this weird package. The Thorny Devil has a false head, a knob of tissue on the back of its neck that looks like a second skull. When threatened, it tucks its real head down and presents the fake one to predators. And its diet? Exclusively ants. This thing eats up to 3,000 ants per day, using its sticky tongue to pick them off one by one. Despite eating constantly, it moves incredibly slowly, taking deliberate steps across the desert sand. Ulm. Deep in the underwater caves of Slovenia and Croatia, there's a blind salamander that can live for over 100 years and survive without food for 10 years. Europe's Ulm looks like a pale, elongated worm with tiny legs, and it's one of the strangest amphibians on Earth. The Ulm is completely blind. It lives its entire life in pitch-black cave systems, so eyes became useless over millions of years of evolution. Instead of sight, it relies on heightened senses of smell and hearing, plus the ability to detect electrical fields in the water produced by prey. Its skin is ghostly white and almost translucent because there's no sunlight to require pigmentation. But here's the weird part. If you expose an ulm to light, it can actually develop some pigment and partially functional eyes, though it prefers to stay in darkness. What's happening here is extreme adaptation to life in complete darkness with almost no food. Cave systems have very little organic matter flowing through them, so the ulm evolved an incredibly slow metabolism. It can go a decade without eating by lowering its metabolic rate to almost nothing. When it does find food like small crustaceans or snails, it stores energy with extreme efficiency. The ulm also has an insane lifespan. Most salamanders live maybe 10 to 20 years. The ulm can live over a century, with some estimates suggesting they might reach 140 years old. They don't reach sexual maturity until they're around 15 years old, and females only reproduce once every 12 years or so. Everything about this animal operates on an extremely slow timescale. To put this in perspective, the ulm breathes through its skin and retains its larval features its entire life, including external gills. It's called a human fish in local languages because its skin tone resembles human flesh. Females carry their eggs for several months before laying them and only produce around 70 eggs in their entire lifetime. This thing is basically a living fossil that never left the cave systems where it evolved millions of years ago. Axolotl. There's a salamander in Mexico that refused to grow up and it's one of the most scientifically important animals on the planet. North America's axolotl stays in its larval form its entire life, keeping its feathery external gills and living underwater permanently. And this condition is called neoteny. And it's not just about looking like a permanent baby. It's a deliberate evolutionary strategy. The axolotl's environment in Lake Xochimilco provided everything it needed underwater, so there was no pressure to develop lungs and leave. But here's where it gets wild. The axolotl can regenerate almost anything. Lose a leg? It grows back perfectly in a few months, complete with bones, muscles, nerves, and blood vessels. Damage your spinal cord? Regenerated. Part of your heart destroyed. The tissue rebuilds itself. Even portions of the brain can regenerate without scarring. What makes this even more impressive is that the regeneration is perfect. There's no scar tissue, no loss of function. Scientists are studying axolotls intensely because understanding how they do this could revolutionize human medicine. The axolotl's genome is 10 times larger than the human genome, making it one of the largest genomes ever sequenced. Imagine regrowing a damaged heart or repairing a severed spinal cord. The axolotl does this routinely. The crazy part is that wild axolotls are nearly extinct. Fewer than 1,000 remain in their natural habitat due to pollution and urbanization of Mexico City. Lake Xochimilco has been reduced to a network of canals, and the water quality is terrible. This is one of the few creatures where the captive population vastly outnumbers the wild one. By the way, if you're enjoying learning about these bizarre creatures, I post content like this regularly. I'd appreciate if you subscribed. Thanks, Hoatzin. In the Amazon rainforest, there's a bird that smells like cow manure, and there's a biological reason for that. South America's Hoatzin is the only bird in the world that ferments its food in its crop, essentially digesting leaves the way a cow digests grass. This gives it a smell so distinctive that locals call it the stink bird. Here's what's happening. The Hoatzin eats almost exclusively leaves, which are notoriously hard to digest. Most birds can't process leaves at all because they don't have the gut bacteria needed to break down cellulose. The Hoatzin solved this problem by evolving a massive specialized crop at the front of its digestive system, where bacteria ferment the leaves before they move to the stomach. This fermentation process produces the same gases and compounds you'd get from cow digestion, which is why it smells so bad. The crop is so large, it takes up most of the bird's chest cavity, which creates another problem. There's no room for large flight muscles. The Hoatzin is a terrible flyer. It can barely get off the ground and mostly just glides clumsily between trees. That massive fermentation chamber made flight nearly impossible, so the bird adapted to a lifestyle of sitting in trees and eating leaves all day. But here's the wild part. Hoatzin chicks have claws on their wings. When a predator threatens the nest, the chicks drop into the water below and use those wing claws to climb back up the tree once danger passes. This ability evolved because Hoatzins nest over water in the Amazon, and dropping into rivers is their primary escape strategy. The chicks lose the claws as they mature, and their wings develop for flight. Hoatzins are also surprisingly good swimmers, which helps the chicks survive after they've dropped into the water to escape predators. Saiga Antelope. There's an antelope in Central Asia with a nose that looks like a short elephant trunk, and it's one of the most unusual looking mammals alive. The Saiga antelope's nose is hugely inflated and flexible, hanging down over its mouth like a miniature proboscis. This isn't just a weird aesthetic choice. That nose is a highly specialized climate control system. The Saiga lives on the steppes of Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and Russia, where temperatures swing from minus 40 degrees Celsius in winter to scorching heat in summer. The enlarged nose serves two critical functions. In winter, the long nasal passages warm the frigid air before it reaches the lungs, preventing tissue damage from breathing in air that would otherwise freeze the respiratory system. In summer, when the steppes turn into dusty, arid plains, those same passages filter out dust particles that would clog a normal nose. What's happening here is an extreme adaptation to one of the harshest environments on the planet. The steppe has almost no cover, brutal temperature swings, and frequent dust storms. The Saiga's nose evolved to handle all of these challenges simultaneously. To put this in perspective, the Saiga has survived since the Ice Age. These animals grazed alongside woolly mammoths and survived extinction events that wiped out dozens of other species. They can run at speeds of up to 80 kilometers per hour, which helps them escape predators across the open steppes. But in 2001, a bacterial infection swept through the population and killed more than 95% of them in just a few days. The Saiga is now critically endangered. Kakapo. New Zealand has a parrot that can't fly, only comes out at night, smells like flowers and honey, and makes a booming sound like a foghorn that travels 5 kilometers. The kakapo is what happens when a parrot evolves on islands with no mammalian predators for millions of years. Here's how weird this bird is. It's the heaviest parrot in the world, weighing up to 4 kilograms, which is part of why it can't fly. When New Zealand split from other land masses, it had no native land mammals. The kakapo had no predators to escape from, so it lost the ability to fly. It became nocturnal, solitary, and developed moss-scented feathers that help it blend into the forest floor. The mating system is bizarre too. Males dig bowl-shaped depressions in the ground and sit in them, making deep booming calls for hours, trying to attract females. They'll boom up to 20,000 times per night during the breeding season. The sound is so low frequency that it travels incredible distances, but makes it hard for females to pinpoint exactly where it's coming from. Males basically turn themselves into living speakers, and sometimes females wander around for hours trying to locate the source of the sound. This ability evolved because kakapos are so spread out and solitary. In dense forests with no way to fly above the canopy, males needed a way to broadcast their presence across long distances. But when humans arrived in New Zealand and brought rats, cats, and stoats, the kakapos' lack of fear and inability to fly made them easy targets. Today, every single kakapo has a name and is tracked constantly by conservationists. They live on predator-free islands where intensive breeding programs are slowly increasing their numbers. There are now around 250 individuals, and each one is precious. The kakapo is also one of the longest-lived birds, with some individuals reaching over 60 years old. Emperor penguin. Antarctica's emperor penguin takes parenting to an extreme that no other animal on Earth matches. In the middle of the Antarctic winter, when temperatures drop to minus 40 degrees Celsius and winds reach 200 kilometers per hour, male emperor penguins stand on the ice holding a single egg on their feet for 2 straight months without eating. Here's how insane this is. After the female lays the egg, she immediately leaves to hunt at sea for 2 months. The male carefully balances the egg on his feet and covers it with a warm flap of skin called a brood pouch. He can't move. He can't hunt. He just stands there in the darkest, coldest, windiest place on the planet, keeping that egg at exactly 37 degrees Celsius, while his own body temperature drops dangerously low. The males huddle together in massive groups, taking turns on the outside and inside of the huddle to share warmth. They'll lose up to 45% of their body weight during this time. When the chick finally hatches, the male feeds it with a special milk-like substance produced in his throat until the female returns with food from the ocean. What's happening here is an evolutionary adaptation to Antarctica's brutal seasonal cycle. Emperor penguins breed during winter because the chicks need to be old enough to survive by summer when the ice breaks up. No other bird breeds in such extreme conditions. The entire breeding cycle is timed precisely so that when the ice melts, the chicks are ready to enter the water and hunt. To put this in perspective, emperor penguins can dive deeper than any other bird, reaching depths of over 500 meters and holding their breath for over 20 minutes. They're built for extremes in every way. The chicks huddle together in groups called creches, while both parents take turns hunting, and they can withstand temperatures that would kill most other animals within minutes. If this sparked your curiosity about the weirdest animals' evolution created across every continent, consider subscribing so you don't miss future content. Thanks for watching.